Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our May 4th, 2021 work session. Up first today, we have a proclamation for Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. Joining us today, we have members of Washington County ABATE, Chapter ABATE of Maryland. So if you guys would come join us up here, please. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. Your organization is one that is close to my heart, and I appreciate everything you do for our community. I think a lot of people aren't aware of a lot of what you do that you don't see every day and isn't necessarily involving motorcycles. So I'll give you guys a chance to talk about that if you'd like to, but it's my honor to proclaim May Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. And I would actually like to introduce Councilmember Burnett. She was the one that brought this idea to the forefront. It's something that's near and dear close to her heart. So I'm going to have her present the proclamation today.
Thank you. So before I read this, thank you, Mayor Keller and city staff for putting this together. May is an important month, not because of only motorcycle safety awareness, but also the anniversary of my father's death. He was driving his Harley Davidson motorcycle on May 7, 2010, and was struck and killed on Route 40. And ever since then, we have made it our duty to spread awareness that watch out for motorcyclists on the road, give space to motorcyclists, and also for motorcyclists to wear their protective equipment and also to signal. So I thank the city for recognizing this important awareness so we can lessen the injuries and fatalities when those are riding motorcycles. Thank you. All right. This is difficult. Jeez, ain't with my mask on? Bear with me, you guys. Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, May 2021. Whereas motorcycle riding is a popular form of recreation and transportation for thousands of people across our state and nation. And whereas the Maryland Department of Transportation Motor Vehicle Administration indicates that there are approximately 280,000 motorcycle licenses in our state, and whereas the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Motorcycle Safety Foundation has named May as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, and whereas according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, IIHS, 5,014 motorists died in crashes in 2019. Motorcycle deaths accounted for 14% of all motorcycle crashes in 2019, and whereas the road safety for all motorists is of great importance to the city of Hagerstown and everyone who calls our city their home. And whereas the motorcyclists are encouraged to join the Washington County chapter of ABATE, a brotherhood aimed towards education, which actively promotes the safe operation of motorcycles as well as promotes motorcycle safety, education, awareness, and respect of citizens. And whereas the city of Hagerstown encourages motorcyclists and motorists to share the road, to stay alert and be aware of their surroundings by checking blind spots and mirrors, as well as using turn signals when changing lanes and when passing. Now, therefore, I, Tiara Burnett, on behalf of the mayor of the city of Hagerstown, Maryland, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month, and Hagerstown encourage residents to join in this effort to keep our streets and highways safe. Thank you. Would you like to say anything?
Hi, I'm Rick Barb. I'm Assistant Director of ABATE of Washington County. I have my wife with me today and other members, Scott and Susie Snow. We'd like to thank you for this on behalf of all of our members. And as you know, we lost a good member last year that was 40 years devoted his life to this. So we'll never forget him, but we'd like to thank you.
Well, speaking of Gary Ballard, who was very instrumental in 12 years ago getting the state to recognize May as Motorcycle Awareness Month, but ABATE pushes for motorcycle awareness 12 months a year. Gary was known from one end of the state to the other, and everyone in Annapolis knew him. This is the first time we've ever had recognition from our local elected officials, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
You can do
I wasn't gonna be back here in y'all's picture.
One for our newsletter.
All right, 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna do a couple of them, okay? Should be. You work so hard, try to work so hard not to be in the picture.
All right, up next, we have update on the Holly Building project at 72 West Washington Street. Mike Fitzgerald, the floor is yours.
How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
So, the plan to put 46 high-end residential units downtown and bring folks coming from out of the area, like a lot of the folks looking to move down to downtown. Frederick is moving forward well. We'd like to get the public part of it tied up and move forward. The economic study on it shows that every retiree we're targeting will bring an average of 3 guests downtown a month. With sets of 2, that's 3,043 people a year. The tax base on the building will go from 200,000 to 6 million. Erbon Basu, the president of the Maryland Economic Development Commission, is in support, and we're really excited about the project. Underground parking, high-end condos, high-end residences in downtown Hagerstown. We think it'll feed all the city's enhancements that the county and city have worked so hard on, and really be good for the community.
Thank you. So, your ask of the city.
$750,000 to be matched by the county. And it's a total of a $11 million project that at most, you'll see the map I've sent in before of other folks' square footage numbers would be much, much more for construction cost.
And that's $250,000 a year for 3 years.
Yes.
Out of our Invest
Out of the
funds,
Invest Hagerstown Fund, yes. And I've had 2 other successful city partnerships, both of them I delivered with the Grand Piano and the Professional Arts. So it's a bet on the future of downtown Hagerstown. I think it'll create a lot of the folks that are looking at other big buildings and, worried about the rent ceiling in Hagerstown. Will show it can be broken. It'll cause a lot of other investments, bring a lot more expendable dollars downtown through the folks living in the facility and the folks coming to visit them, which will create, such as in downtown Frederick, when folks started coming there in 2004 and 5, they saw the row home for $100,000, put $200,000 in. I think it's going to create a lot of investments like that, shops in downtown Hagerstown, and give downtown Hagerstown the expendable dollars it deserves.
Sounds like a good project.
Do you guys have any further questions for Mike? I think Kristen hit the nail on the head earlier about modernizing our
Yes.
housing stock, so this
It's
is
gonna
an
be
exciting project.
A modern project, high-tech project, and it's gonna be a modernization project. Downtown Hagerstown can be, and Hagerstown, the county, the city, can be super proud of. It wouldn't be possible without them. And, it's definitely gonna be a nice economic driver to the future of the community.
Well, thanks for the update, Mike. Let's get this done.
Thanks for your commitment too, appreciate it.
Thanks.
That's good? Good?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good?
thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, up next we have Preservation Maryland. We're at Jonathan Street discussion. We have Nicholas Redding, the President and CEO of Preservation Maryland. Oh, and Katie.
Well, it is good to be here. We appreciate the opportunity to present and answer any questions that may be had about the work that we're doing, and I've got a little bit of an update for you on some of this. So again, just for the record, my name's Nicholas Redding. I'm the President and CEO of Preservation Maryland, and joined today by Katie Parks, who's the vice president of the organization. And we want to talk briefly about our work on Jonathan Street, and again, answer any questions we can about our interests in the history of what we consider a pretty unique place. Just for some background, Preservation Maryland was founded back in 1931, so this is our 90th anniversary. And since then, we've worked to save, protect, invest, enhance historic places, communities, resources in every county and corner of the state since our establishment. Our work in Jonathan Street began in 2019 and was largely spurred by a spate of demolitions of historically significant structures and the potential loss of several more without direct action. So since then, working in partnership with several citizens of Hagerstown and other organizations, we've begun to investigate potential properties to protect. And the first project began in earnest with the acquisition of 417 North Jonathan Street, which is a historic log cabin that was threatened by demolition due to a recent collision with a vehicle. Working with the previous owner, Mr. Davis, we purchased the property through a LLC that we created in 2020 and broke ground on rehabilitation in early 2021. And so if you've been down Jonathan Street, you'd see our crews there. We're probably the only big, large crew on Jonathan Street right now. And in the fall of 2020, the organization also partnered with the Maryland State Highway Administration to host a professional excavation of the site, which was covered internationally also by the Smithsonian and pretty much every major media outlet here in the DMV. That project included what's known as a dendrochronological study, or dendrochronology, which determined that the building was built on the site in 1830 or thereabout, which we knew, but it was constructed from logs that were felled in the winter of 1739. And I probably don't have to give a history lesson to the members of the Hagerstown City Council, but in 1739, there was pretty much only one person living in Hagerstown, and that was Jonathan Hager. He had built 2 log cabins before he constructed the stone structure that we know today. So it's likely that the building at 417, by pure coincidence, is the oldest standing structure left in Hagerstown. And is very likely to be Jonathan Hager's original cabin, because the property was owned by a Hager heir. And so in the 1830s, they probably disassembled it and then moved it over there and turned it into rental housing. Thanks to a partnership with Habitat for Humanity of Washington County, the long-term use of the structure will be for owner-occupied affordable housing. We plan to convey the property to a new Habitat owner, hopefully in the fall of '21. And we are also planning on several open houses for the community and members of the broader region to come and visit the site this summer. Funding for this project came from a variety of sources, including private and public dollars, and was greatly aided by a bond bill advocated for by the members of the Washington County delegation in the 2020 session of the Maryland General Assembly. In addition to our work on the historic cabin, in 2020, prior to the pandemic, we privately raised the necessary funds to engage the Jonathan Street community in a collaborative planning process to identify what they consider to be the most historic resources. So it's not just us walking in saying what we think matters, but we want to hear from the community. That process, which we've referred to and has been referred to in other communities as community asset mapping, was unfortunately put on hold due to COVID-19. So a little bit of a cart before the horse process. We had hoped to do that before we broke ground on anything, but the cabin was threatened and we couldn't really do legitimate outreach. But it's a process that we hope to jumpstart with a consultant this late summer or early fall of '21. As the council's also aware, earlier this year we sought and received additional funding from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development to support a broad range of community development and preservation opportunities in the neighborhood. And we're currently laying the groundwork for those projects, completing due diligence, and have begun various conversations with numerous partners and potential property owners, notably including the Robert W. Johnson Community Center, which I know is near and dear to members of the council and the mayor. And we're also submitting an application in support of the community center to deploy high-speed broadband internet access to the center, which will meet a number of their needs. And we've been working with Jessica Scott on those issues. It is, however, I should say, the policy of Preservation Maryland not to discuss real estate or partnership agreements in a public forum. And so we can't comment any further on any potential acquisitions or partnerships beyond that at this point. Additionally, as the council is also aware, earlier this spring, we made an offer to the Dolman Black Heritage Museum board to support the redevelopment of the Coca-Cola Administrative Building as a fully functioning Black Heritage Museum. The DBHM board ultimately decided not to pursue that proposal, and as we told them and we tell you, we completely respect that decision, and we wish them the absolute best moving forward with that worthwhile project. So in conclusion, we want to thank the council for the opportunity to address these projects, upcoming community planning efforts, and our aspirations for the community. Having a positive relationship with this council and mayor is important to us, which I hope has been evidenced by the one-on-one meetings that we've offered to all members of the council, and those that we hosted with many of the council members who took us up on that over the past several weeks. We believe preservation, and we genuinely see this as a powerful tool for community redevelopment, and that Jonathan Street's unique story is one worth preserving. And we thank you again for the opportunity to present and answer any questions you may have.
You have any questions? Kristen?
I would like to ask on public record if Tierra and I could be a part of what you guys are doing. I know oftentimes people say we spoke to the community, to the Jonathan Street community, and that's such a delicate, it's a delicate situation for me. Because if people say we've talked to the community, and Tierra and I both from the community, and we hear different things, then it means you only talk to 1% or 2% or 15 people. That's not the entire community. It's very near and dear to my heart. I was working at the community center and found some boxes of information of history in there. And so I would like to be a part moving forward. I know there's some community partners that you guys work with, but as far as the city partnership, we are 2 city elected officials from the Jonathan Street community. I know everybody thinks they know the community. But that would be my request.
Well, I don't endeavor to say I know the community, so I don't want to say that. And I would say, since you asked on the record, I'd like to say on the record, we would love to. And we would love to have you engaged in that way. You know, we have like a weekly update call with certain community members, and we'd have to figure out how to handle that in such a way that it's not ex parte or something like that with members of council. But in any way that we can engage you, or anytime you want to drop in, or site visits and talk about projects that we're working on, we'd be thrilled to have that direct communication with the city that way.
That would be amazing.
Be awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roxanne, if I can offer.
Sure.
In addition, as we start flushing out a time frame with more detail for the community asset mapping, we would love to come back and provide an update on that process and get your input on the best way to engage with the community in that process.
Yeah, that would be great, because I know that you're looking to do a ribbon cutting, probably, you know, or not even, I don't want to say ribbon cutting, but a grand opening of that house. But within 2 blocks, a block away, it's bad. And that's not going to draw that part of the community up to that block to see something great that happened. And so working with Tierra, Councilmember Burnett, and I would be able to tie all of that in together, as far as the development that's happening, but also what's happening socially down there. It kind of begins to leave a stain and make us seem like we're a divided community, and we're really not. And it breaks my heart to see that Dolman is not a part of this. It breaks my heart as a Jonathan Street community resident, as someone who still walks through, it breaks my heart, because at the end of the day, when leaders lose, it's the community, it's the people down there that lose. It's not, we make decisions often, I'm sorry, but we make decisions often based off of conflict and things going on, and the community loses. And I'm really, really, really over it when it comes to this entire city, is people competing whenever we need to be working and collaborating together. And so thank you guys for your work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your commitment to the community.
Completely agree, and would love to have you engaged. And it was fun to have you out on site to see the building, and hopefully everybody's driven past it and seen the progress that we've been making. So,
You know, I do have one thing that I want to ask, because during your presentation, you said about making the Coca-Cola plant a true Black Heritage Museum, including the Dolan Black Heritage Museum. I honestly have never seen the plan that they have decided to forego. So, you know, if someone can show me a structure of what that would look like, you know, you may be able to pull me into your corner where I'm not right now. Okay, right now, as Takesha has already said, you know, it appears like there's this kind of fight for control of something, and it's a divided effort and not a combined effort. And I believe in order for anything to be successful, be it in the Jonathan Street community or anywhere, there has to be a combined effort to make something successful. And right now, I see a division between parties that want to reach the same goal. I mean, I can see that because I know the individuals that you've been, you know, talking with and collaborating with. So I know everybody wants to reach that goal, but it doesn't seem like, you know, there is any discussion amongst that group to make that happen. I mean, you know, originally would have been, Scott, what was it, April of 20? Probably. Conversation that I had with Secretary Holt, which began this process, basically. Sitting right over there, you know, the conversation was to have Secretary Holt, Preservation Maryland, Dolan Black Heritage Museum, all in a room together and having a conversation about how we accomplish that. And here we are, the Dolman's not here, you are, Secretary Holt's not here. A couple weeks ago, Dolmans were here, you weren't, Secretary Holt wasn't here. So I don't understand why we can't accomplish that.
Well, we
Well,
weren't,
with,
to be,
and with all due respect, they weren't invited to the meeting that the Dolman Black Heritage Museum was last
I
week or 2
understand.
weeks ago.
That's not,
So that
and I'm
wasn't
not
a
blaming
fault of-
anybody
Okay,
for not being, I'm just saying that, you know, in order to accomplish what wants to be accomplished there, I do believe that all the entities involved need to be sitting in a room having a conversation of how to accomplish that. And right now, we're not anywhere near there. We're separate entities trying to achieve the same thing. And
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
Okay. So that absolutely was the intention of this meeting after last week or the week before, was to have Secretary Holt and Preservation Maryland and the Dolman Black Heritage Museum in here and all getting on the same page. Shortly after that happened is when the Dolman Black Heritage Museum Board sent Preservation Maryland the letter saying that they were not accepting their proposal as planned. So Secretary Holt was no longer coming because he was no longer involved. And we wanted to give Preservation Maryland the time to present what they were up to and working on in our community. I'm not sure if you are in receipt of this correspondence that we received yesterday from the Dolman Black Heritage Museum.
No.
They did send it to us and asked that this portion be read. And I'm gonna read it because I do think it's very relevant to the conversation that we're having right now. She said, this was from Alicia Parsons McBean. In addressing Preservation Maryland's initial proposal, the DBHM board's response addressed only Preservation Maryland's proposed terms as presented. No agreement can be expected to be comprehensive or satisfactory when created unilaterally without meaningful input from all parties involved. Mutual agreement is essential in the formation of any contract. While Preservation Maryland has described the Dolman Museum as dynamic and necessary project, it is declared that approval of its written proposal is non-negotiable. Preservation Maryland's response was unexpected. The board's initial response to the specific proposal submitted was not intended as an expression of disinterest. Any proposal which furthers the museum and the community in which it is proposed of interest to DBHM, however, only when properly considered and restructured can such an agreement be supported. So I believe you may have received a copy of that.
No.
Because in the next sentence, it says, constructive discussion should always proceed drafting. This correspondence has been submitted to you as well. Maybe not, I'll make sure you
No,
receive that.
we didn't
And-
receive
but and that was sent to us, and I wasn't sure what was communicated to you guys, but it seems like by those sentences that they are still willing to negotiate, which I think leads to a bigger conversation of let's get everyone in the same room, if you guys are still willing to be involved in that project. And if not, and I think that's another conversation with how we move everything forward. And it's certainly not a decision you have to discuss or make right now,
Yeah,
sitting in
well,
front of
yeah,
us.
we
But-
wouldn't do that in a public forum,
No,
so
but I do agree
yeah.
with Councilmember Brucci, though, of getting everyone, involving all the parties and the community, as Councilmember Martinez spoke about, all on the same page and moving toward one unilateral goal. It's important.
Well, that's the first we've heard of that, so we're hearing it for the first time right now.
Ta-da.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think that the work that we're interested in moving forward, and I think the community center is not only a valuable historic resource, but is a critical community resource. You know, I think that we are committed to investing those funds that the state has put forward in projects like that. We made what we thought was a worthwhile offer, and this is the first we're even hearing anything back from them other than no. So we would have to take that under advisement, but I think that there's really important other projects to get done in the community, and we would love to talk to obviously anyone who wants to talk to us, but the two council members who expressed interest in talking to us about Jonathan Street, and perhaps have a more in-depth conversation around that issue.
Yeah, and I appreciate you working with the Robert W. Johnson Center. I know when we met in January, that was kind of, we were looking at all of the projects going, well, if the Robert W. Johnson Center isn't fully functional, if the pool's not open, if it's not ADA compliant, if it's not meeting regulation, that does a disservice to the youth in that community that need that center and that grew up in that center. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing there. It's
Not only that,
important.
it was the first African-American school, and so
Right.
it's a very vital part of history in Hagerstown.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for the work, and I don't want to take away from the work that you guys have done. I just want to be an asset and add to it.
Oh, yeah,
When
absolutely.
it comes to that community. Nothing hurt my heart more than to have to listen to everybody else tell me what was happening, that in a community that I've literally stand on the corners and you know, and taking control of things myself, when it comes to what's happening down there, from the youth to the old people. And so there's a lot of people care about it. A lot of people love the Jonathan Street community. And Tierra and I sit here as elected officials from that community. And so it's just important that we're utilized, and that's also honored moving forward as
Absolutely.
leaders in the community.
And like I mentioned on our one-on-one call with Preservation Maryland, it's important to make sure you do get boots on the ground and talk to the community members. I offered, having like a town hall setting, or
Yes.
due to COVID, even having it at the parking lot of the Robert W. Johnson Center, because, we grew up in that area. I was the first recipient of the scholarship from the Robert W. It was actually called Memorial Rec at the time. But back in the day, I was the first recipient for the college scholarship fund. And it's really true dear to my heart. As a former board member of that center, I definitely want to see that building succeed and the board members to succeed, as well as those kids. Those kids is also involved with our summer basketball league, the Ruth Ann Monroe Summer Basketball League. So that community is home. And I'm glad to hear this out in a public setting, because again, like Councilmember Martinez said, we was getting hearsay. And like I mentioned on our Zoom call, I don't like hearsay. I'd rather hear it from the horse's mouth, especially when it impacts my family that still lives in the Jonathan Street community. So as long as there's transparency that's allowable due to, confidentiality,
Right.
I would greatly appreciate to keep that emphasis on the community, asking those people on the block, what do they want, and keeping them in mind with any project that you have in the
Right.
foreseeable future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we have funding available for that, and we've been interviewing black-run planning firms throughout the three-state area to try and find the right firm to come in and help us coordinate some of that as well. And I've been talking with some really great organizations out there that have done some of that work. So we're committed to that, have funding lined up for it. But that obviously, that's a more formalized, structured part. But what you're talking about is something that we'd be thrilled to have. So we really appreciate, that offer from both of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, when we had our direct conversation, I attempted to express the desire for as great a clarity as possible in those comprehensive efforts. To the degree that I obviously had some confusion between the ask or the application, if you will, from the city for the $200,000, right, through the DHCD process for our obvious ongoing efforts within the community, and receiving the separate funds, I think the $325,000, and having some degree of ambiguity on how those funds would be applied, number one, and whether they were to be accounted for as the ask that we made. And I think that that's part of the difficulty that we have, because as I expressed during our conversation, we as an elected body sit in this public chamber and we communicate our priorities and our communications and our partnerships that we develop with our community partners, our citizens, on what those priorities may be. We make those asks to those effects to bring in the other parties in that cooperative effort. And then I think it's difficult when you're given the impression that the ask that you've made appears not to be the offer that you've then received through that state funding process. And if it is different, then we need to redeliberate on that in these public settings with those same public partners and those same citizens that we have to effectively communicate with to ensure that there is cooperative effort on any change in direction there may be. And I still, even at this point, have some continued confusion on the ask that we made and the funding that we received, and how those two are compatible and should be applied. And it is disconcerting to receive what I felt was a definitive response from the state that says, in effect, hey, we know you made this ask. Here's the funding we provided. Feel free to use it for that, and this will be the end of it. And I guess that isn't the tenet of what I would expect to be sort of that collaborative and cooperative ongoing partnership to achieve that collective goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, but we're not party to your grant agreement. So it would be an answer probably more from Scott or the mayor as to what your grant agreement says and how it's to be disposed of. Or dispensed with, I suppose. I can't speak on behalf of the department.
Right. I mean, that is a question more for Secretary Holt.
Yeah, which I don't believe I'll be afforded the opportunity to ask in this venue.
Wow.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
I don't understand.
Shelley, do you have anything?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Good. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
We appreciate you coming.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and we truly look forward to collaborating with the council and with the community in Johnson Street. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Fiscal year 21 change to funding sources for 2 projects and fiscal year 22 budget review. Michelle and Brooke. Good afternoon. Afternoon.
We thought this evening, before we get back to the fiscal year '22 budget specifically, that we wanted to provide a quick update on two of our projects. And the first one, and both of these projects have been previously approved. Funding sources on the consent agendas were previously approved. They're all in progress and everything is on order. The first one has to do with our fire department and our most recent order for a new fire pumper / engine. When we came back in November, we had indicated on the consent agenda form, and it was included in the budget, that we were going to fund that 100% with general fund balance reserves. Since that time, when we have been doing final review, looking at everything that we currently had open on our books, we realized that we have $252,000 remaining in unspent 2019 bond proceeds. And those 2019 bond proceeds actually were for fire pumpers. We had previously bought another engine, and it did not cost as much as we had originally intended. And after consulting with our bond counsel, again, the bond was already approved. It was approved for the purchase of a pumper, and we still have it unspent. So we would like to just let everybody know that first and foremost, for the new purchase, we're going to utilize those unspent proceeds, and then any remaining balance will come from general fund balance reserves. But just wanted to update you because this body and this administration had voted on that purchase and those funding sources. The second one is a little different, and it is Pangbourne Lake and stream improvements and restoration. This project has been ongoing for a little while. We had completed a tax-exempt bond document for it, and when we completed our bond documents and got approval, again, we have the bond money. Again, the project is moving forward and we're actually completing it. But at the point that we did the bond documents, when it is a tax-exempt bond, we go through a more rigorous and strenuous process. There's a lot more restrictions in place, a lot more other things that have to be done. And so we did not, when we did that bond, indicate that a portion of the project would be paid back through stormwater. And as this project was developed later, in July of 2021, as you know, we created a whole separate stormwater fund. So when we bid the project, we didn't even differentiate in our original bid document how much of the project was going to be stormwater eligible versus general. And in looking at the way that the work was coming out, it was a 67 to 33% split, meaning 33% of the work being done was going to be stormwater eligible. Because we did not segregate everything, it would be a little bit difficult now to transfer and allocate, move those bond monies from one fund to the other. So it is my recommendation, after speaking with bond counsel, that we continue as is, leave the whole project to be paid back by the general fund. The amount of the difference, the bond was a 15-year bond. The amount of the difference is about $10,000 a year because the project is coming in significantly under budget. So about $150,000 total over the life of the bond. Again, more cleanup than anything, but I wanted this body and this group, we wanted to be as open, as transparent as possible. So wanted to make you aware of those two items. Do you have any questions or concerns with the proposed changes in the funding sources? Okay. So now we'll take a look and jump back to fiscal year '22 budget. And this evening, we were going to take a look first and foremost at overall capital improvement projects, and knowing that we are going to be spending a lot of time in the near future, a lot of time and effort, lots of meetings coming up strategically to be discussing infrastructure projects. I think this evening we want to make everybody aware of this specific section within our budget book. And again, what has been budgeted here does not include any additional monies that we're getting from the American Recovery Program. So we're just gonna take a couple minutes to cover overall big picture in reports that can be found in the capital improvement project. So that is section 7 in your budget book. And if I could, I'm going to take a minute to focus on the general fund first. And I'm going to point us to page 15. Just important to note in this section, unlike in the other sections, this section is a combination of capital and infrastructure projects for all city funds. It doesn't matter which one it is. But again, we start out at the very beginning with an overall summary, and then have summary reports, and then from the summary reports by fund, we go into detailed sheets on every single project. So for the general fund for capital improvements on page 15, I wanted to point out one of my most favorite reports. It's projects by funding source. And again, when you look at this report, I guess one of the things just primarily to note is if you see a specific project listed under a funding source, it might not be the amount of the entire cost of that project, because it could be that it's broken into many different components. But first off, bond financing for the general fund is the top section. And again, just touching base, because I want to make sure that, you know, there's people who think, hey, if we make adjustments in the capital side, we can have that money's free and available to use within the general fund for normal recurring operations. And that may be true with some certain types of funding, but again, when we talk about bond financing, and if you look for fiscal year 22 in total, for general fund, we have about 4.2 million of projects to need future bond financing. If we decided not to do those projects, it doesn't mean I automatically have $4.2 million available. This is money that we would anticipate that we would get in a bond, a loan if you would, and that we would make payments back through 15, 20, sometimes 25 years. So again, if you remove one of those projects, let's just say it's the very first one, which is $1.5 million for a ladder truck for the fire department. It doesn't mean if we don't do that, we put $1.5 million back in the general fund and we can give city administrator a $1 million bonus. That doesn't work, sorry. Sorry. Again, because it's not normal recurring money, it's restricted money. And once we go through all the steps and the documentation necessary, just like I went over with a funding change earlier, we don't have the luxury or the ability to just transfer or move it to another project. The next two categories on this page have to do with fund balance. So you see the section that says general fund, GF fund balance reserves for $937,000. Again, that's money we talked about that we were going to use for one-time projects, taking it from the reserves. Again, the unassigned fund balance reserves, which has been accumulated in prior years, because we can utilize that for one-time items. We typically do not and would never recommend utilizing fund balance reserve for normal, ongoing, and routine cost. So there are several projects here. The bottom section where it says CIP fund balance just means within this specific fund itself. So some of the monies here could be for something, we have a cable franchise agreement and we get monies. And the money, some of the monies that we get is earmarked and restricted that we can only do capital projects with. That money stays within this project and stays within that project until it's utilized, because we can't necessarily move it for another project and we can't, again, necessarily utilize it in other places. As you flip the next couple of pages, you're going to see a lot of different things. Contributions, grants, again, seems like there's a lot of dollars and a lot of monies here. These grants, just like bond financing, are very specific and, again, restrictive in nature. Some of these grants require that we do a local city match, meaning we put local funding to offset them. On page 17, again, we'll see that there's different types of grants. We try to put as much as information as we can without listing every single individual grant that's possibly out there. But a third of the, or 2/3 of the way down the page, you'll see prior bond proceeds. So again, just disclosing, you'll see the very first item is a fire department vehicle for $252,000. That's the specific item I just talked about. Again, as we reviewed and saw that we had unspent bond proceeds, we included it in our budget, and so it's there. Both of those, both the $252,000 and $199,000, again, were from previously issued bonds, and the 2019 one definitely has very specific time constraints on when we have to utilize and get that all paid. Reforestation funds, again, is restricted. We don't have the ability to utilize it anywhere else than basically replanting trees. State highway user money, HUR funding, we sometimes call it, HUR. Again, the state gives us that money, but it's only allowed to be utilized for certain things. Our biggest category that we utilize it for is our pavement preservation programs, our street programs. And then page 18 and 19, when you start to see the words transfer to the CIP, it transfers into this program from other funds. These are more unrestricted funding, means it's funding for the most part in our other funds that we can utilize. So if you look at the top of page 19, the amount of money that we are going to utilize in projects for the general fund is at $1,116,000. Sometimes we'll use the phrase pay-go. It just means the revenue that we anticipate that we're going to make and we're going to see in fiscal year 22, as well as the expenses, we are going to set aside $1,116,000 to utilize that towards capital projects. Those are ones where if you say, hey, let's not do this, and we can use that money somewhere else, that's where we would start first, especially when I cannot balance the budget sometimes in February with initial requests. The only word of caution is that sometimes the monies that you'll see there are actually local dollars that are made, that are matches to grants that we have applied for. Starting on page 44. And you can flip there if you want, but just on page 44 starts individual sheets for each of the individual projects. So there's where you will find way more details on what's involved. First one is computer equipment and software, so you'll see lots of good information, descriptions, justification. At the bottom, you'll see how much we anticipate spending, and then right underneath it, you'll see the different funding sources. So again, once you know a specific project, and if you have questions on exactly what we plan to do within that individual project, for the most part, you're gonna find them from page 44 to the rest of this. I'm gonna let Brooke talk just real quickly on parking.
I'm going to review parking and stormwater CIPs briefly. On page 36 are parking projects by funding source. In FY22, $25,000 is budgeted using parking funds for mostly maintenance type CIPs. But as we look at FY24 and 25, you'll see a significant jump, and this is for a potential third parking deck, which is detailed on page 160. Over FY24 and 25, there's approximately $8 million budgeted using bond financing for the acquisition of land, design, and construction of a third parking deck.
And just to note that on that sheet under, on page 160 for the third parking deck. Two-thirds of the way down, you'll see where it says budget impact / other. If there is an item that has a future bond cost, we typically include information there that tells what we are anticipating the repayment terms will be and assumed interest rate. We normally only do that and reflect it if it's something that is going to be bond funded, like in the most next fiscal year, so in this case, in fiscal year 22. However, because the third parking deck has been one of those priority projects that's talked about, push it up, push it back, we do like to put as much information as possible here so that you can see by looking to do a bond fund for $8 million, if we have to do it over 25 years, we are assuming in this case it's a taxable issue, and by then 4.75%, and we're literally telling you if that is the case, then that's about $747,000 in repayment terms.
For 25 years.
Yeah, sorry.
And you're estimating
Yes, 47,000 plus 485.
That's why, and you're estimating 135 in revenue return annually, which I think is low, but I mean, that's fine. We're never gonna get that, so our expectation is life cycle return, not the 25-year. That's why we're jumping up to that 535 or whatever.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
That's why the deficit's jumping up to 535
Yes,
once that goes in.
Yes. yes.
So we gotta figure out something between now and then to
Yeah, and we'll cover,
absorb some of that.
I'll cover parking in just a little bit more detail when we look at the actual parking fund and projections. But again, wanted to stop long enough here because this one is a priority project, I know. And again, because in the parking fund, really, there's not a whole lot of other projects that we have in place for fiscal year 22. Sorry, Brooke.
No, it's okay.
Now I'm gonna flip us to stormwater.
Yeah. Page 42, section 7. FY '22 has about $1 million budgeted, which is all stormwater funded. We're just gonna look at 2 of those, which is curb replacement program on page 173. This used to be the responsibility of the property owner, but now the city has taken over curb maintenance. So there is about $100,000 budgeted each year, all stormwater funded. Then,
And again, I think this was one of the biggest positives that our residents could immediately see is that the city started maintaining this now that we've implemented a separate program.
and then on page 175 is stormwater protection program implementation, which is the retrofit of existing flood control stormwater facilities. In FY '22, $500,000 is budgeted, all stormwater funded, and that's for MKS Business Park. And then in the out years, 24 through 26, is North High, Fairgrounds Park, CRS, and Hagerstown Industrial Park.
So again, because we were in the capital program and because it was several different funds, we kind of wanted to hit parking and stormwater because those were the areas we were going to focus on this evening. And when we come back next week, we'll hit a couple of these other funds. But again, wanting to make sure that we hit parking and stormwater on the capital side while we were there. So now I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to backtrack on you and talk about parking overall. And again, there's a section in the budget book which shows to the dollar the information on the parking, and that's within our enterprise fund section. But because parking, we want to talk bigger picture, so I want to talk about the 5-year projections. And so in section 6 on page 27, and just again as another reminder, because we're in the 5-year projection section, the dollars here are going to be rounded to the thousands. So for instance, I didn't want anybody to look at the total parking deck revenue and see the 354 and think it's only $354. It's actually $354,000. So wanted to talk about parking for a couple of reasons. when we look at the financial projection section, if you look at the middle column, that's going to be our fiscal year 22 proposed budget. But if you look clear at the bottom of the page, because parking fund is an enterprise fund, it is supposed to be self-sustaining, meaning the charges that are done through the parking system for the customers to utilize the decks or parking meters or parking lots, that money is to pay for the ongoing and the upkeep. Meaning that we would not defer tax revenue from citizens to put necessarily into parking, because we recognize that not 100% of the users of the parking deck in the streets and the lots are our citizens, right? So again, it's an enterprise fund. The money that we charge here should, again, pay for the ongoing, the upkeep, maintenance, and the resources that we need. So in the center column, fiscal year 22 budget, at the top, we break down the parking deck revenue. And you can see we have the University District parking deck, the A&E, or the Arts and Entertainment parking deck, which is smaller in size. And then we did add into the out year, so we're not very creative with the naming, we just call it Parking Deck 3. And then after parking deck revenue, we give you information on the parking lots and the meters. And then right underneath that is parking enforcement. Again, it's all part of our parking system. And after we get through those and we look at the operating expenses, we break it down so that you can try to line up the revenue and the dollars that you see for the university parking deck to the expenses and the normal costs that we're incurring there. Clear at the bottom of the page, it says increase, decrease, and retained earnings. If you're a for-profit business, this is literally your gain or your loss that you're making in a year. Meaning, am I making enough revenue to offset all my expenses? And if not, I got a loss or a deficit. So I will say that for fiscal year 22, we are anticipating that the parking fund is going to have a deficit. I will say fiscal year 20 was the first time in many years that our parking fund actually operated at a deficit, and the primary reason was because of COVID, and we, businesses were shut down, but not just that, then we had parking free for quite some time. Even though we've started to charge again for parking, there's been big changes that businesses have made. Not a lot of businesses have workers coming back full force at 100%. Like they did before. So parking revenue is definitely not quite to the level that it was before. We're anticipating that it's going to rebound, but not for fiscal year 22. If you flip the page, it's a very small section on the next page, and all we're doing there is saying, okay, it's a business type fund, and I know that I got Michelle, it's great. I got a gain or I got a deficit. Tell me at the end of the day how that impacts us on the cash side. So the line that says net surplus / deficit tells you if, when you look at everything else considered, because even though we charge and send bills, some people may pay them, some people may not. So we're, again, looking at things from a cash perspective. So if it's in a deficit or in brackets, that means our cash is decreasing. If it's not in brackets, it means our cash is increasing. And then you will see, again, fiscal year 20, we definitely had a decrease in our cash of about $92,000. We're anticipating with current year, fiscal year 21 projections to lose another $207,000 or another decrease of that magnitude. And again, in fiscal year 22. We ended the year in fiscal year 20 with about almost $1.5 million in cash in the parking fund. And as of today, we're at about $1,300,000. So hopefully, we're hoping it levels off. And when we flip back to the other page, when we look in the out years, the reason we want to concentrate on the financial projections here is because when we look at adding that third parking deck, and again, we talked about adding it and starting it in fiscal year 24 and 25, you'll see that completion would be for a full year in fiscal year 26. So you'll see we got some revenue. Under the expenses, you'll see that we have a line that says parking deck number 3, about $205,000. And again, we're just looking at our other two decks and saying, on average, how much do we use in expenses? And taking that as an average, because right now we don't have better numbers. But then if you come on down, you'll see under non-operating revenue and expenses, you'll see a line that says interest / bond expense, and you'll see how much we're paying there specifically as it starts to increase, right? So going from about $15,000 a year on current bonds and debt that the parking deck has in '22, up to $212,000 once we incur and do that new bond issue for $8 million. If you flip the page one more time, towards the very bottom, you will see, the top, you will see a line that says principal payments on current long-term debt. So in fiscal year '22, about $69,000. That drops off because we have one small bond that will be paid off after '22. But again, going from about $30,000 back up to $366,000 in fiscal year '26. And again, that's incurring an additional $8 million in debt, bond financing. Any questions before we look at stormwater real quick? And that's very fast, I know, but I'm sorry. Stormwater is in the same section, section 6, page 34. There's not very much history because we just started July 1. So fiscal year proposed budget, again, is in the center. We've got revenue at the top. Again, on this one, it's about halfway down the page. You see the line, it's got double underline. Increase, decrease in retained earnings. Again, that is an enterprise fund, and if there is a gain or a loss on the year. Come clear to the bottom where it says net surplus / deficit. So in fiscal year '22, we're anticipating that, we're gonna not see a cash pickup, that we'll see actual cash decrease still of $191,000. That's not unusual. Actually, in the first 3 to 5 years of any new business getting started, cash flow doesn't always go in a positive direction those first 3 years. I will say as of today, May the 4th, the Stormwater Fund has a negative $458,000. You may say, Michelle, how can we have a negative $458,000? When we end the year at June 30, the city of Hagerstown is set up that it has a pooled cash account, meaning that we will do a temporary transfer for 1 day only from the general fund over to Stormwater Fund so that their cash is where it needs to be. So overall, the city of Hagerstown has plenty of cash. There is no jeopardy of us not being able to pay our bills. It's just that within this specific fund, they haven't got to the point where their cash is enough to pay all their bills yet. And actually, we just started in March. So in March, the first billings that went out, water and sewer bills, and they were monthly bills, actually, our bigger customers, $57,000. And again, in April, the bills just went out last week for another $58,000. So about $116,000 in revenue has been billed in stormwater fees. And the first cycle of water and sewer bills will see a stormwater fee this month, May, in the quarterly rotations. Any specific questions for stormwater? And when we come back, we will talk about, take some time to look through and talk specifics on CDBG. I'll take a little bit longer in economic redevelopment because that's where all of our incentive programs are. And then we'll finish up, probably real brief, just electric, water, and wastewater. And that'll be it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I can see the headline tomorrow being that our finance operator said we have plenty of cash.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just didn't want anybody to panic when I said the words negative cash, right? Because it will happen.
All right, next we have the tax differential presentation / discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've had discussions internally here, related to some of the outstanding issues related with the county. We've talked about really three main areas. The first is 911 center payment that we've discussed ad nauseum in public session. The second would be the fair level funding of fire services that Chief Laura has been in here several times to talk about. And the one thing we really haven't talked about is related to the tax differential as it relates to property taxes. And this will also be good for the new council members to understand, and it's also something that would be very nice to be able to get every year, a discussion to get every year as far as because it may seem like a simple concept, but as Michelle will tell you, the calculation is not an easy one to apply. But as definitions as to what a tax differential is, it's a method of compensating for double taxation that directly benefits the municipal taxpayer by decreasing the amount of tax paid to the county. Double taxation occurs, and it's the one thing we always hear, why do I want to live in the city and be double taxed? So double taxation occurs when a municipal resident pays property taxes to the local government of the municipality, that's us. Oops.
That's us.
That's actually Councilmember McIntyre that gets all that money.
Look at there I am.
Double taxation occurs when the municipal resident pays property taxes to the local government, which is us, and the county, Washington County, in which they reside, to finance identical or similar services that they receive only or primarily from one source. Now, that can be either that they receive 100% from that one source, or it can be a percentage of services that they receive from that one source. State law requires the county shall meet annually with the governing body of each municipality to discuss the rate of county property taxation, but the law does not require that each county adjusts its tax rate to compensate for double taxation. Also, state law does not require every county. It's part of COMAR, where it designates which counties are by state law mandated to come and speak to the local municipality as to how the tax differential is being calculated. We are not included in that. Washington County does not, by statute, have to come tell us anything. It is possible that no tax differential could be awarded to small municipalities that provide very few services. In order to justify a tax differential from the county, a municipality must provide a sufficient number of services to offset the state shared revenue that it receives. I don't believe that really relates to any municipality in Washington County, although, as we all know, and it's extremely obvious, there are some municipalities that do not provide nearly the services to their tax-paying resident that the city of Hagerstown does. The alternative to differential is a rebate, where the county will cut a yearly check to the municipality for the costs related to redundant services. That is the way it was done here up until Councilman Brucci, I think it was 2009, 2010, when the county directed to the city that we would now operate under a differential instead of a rebate.
Fiscal year 10.
I think it was fiscal year 10.
Yeah, it happened in 9 fiscal year.
Right. There is a lot of history. I'm not going to go through this history. We'll have a part of the packet online if anybody really cares to go through it. Really, the important part comes down into here, the tax differential model. The model that's used in the county's calculation is referred to as the Anne Arundel County model. This model exists between the county of Anne Arundel and its one municipality, Annapolis. All other areas in Anne Arundel County are unincorporated, with Annapolis obviously the only municipality receiving a differential. Washington County, by contrast, has 9 municipalities, and this model assumes one tax differential for all those municipalities. So every municipality in Washington County receives the same tax differential. So how it should work, and I try to get a little creative here. Oh, let me go back.
It's cute.
I'm a little IT challenged anymore. So how tax differential should work. If you live outside of Washington County, if you live outside of a Washington County incorporated city or town, one of those 9 you just saw, you pay one tax. And you pay it only to the county, and you pay that tax rate, the county overall tax rate. If you're a City of Hagerstown resident, you pay a property tax to Washington County, and you pay a property tax to the city for services provided by each of those governments. To avoid the double taxation, the process should be that City of Hagerstown residents will pay taxes on only the services that Hagerstown provides them, and that they will pay to the county only those 100% or a fraction of the services that the county provides to them directly. That differential, the difference between those two of redundant services, is 12.5 cents. It's been 12.5 cents since 2009. It has not changed. And that is what the county feels is what the differential for what would amount to a double taxation of a city resident would be. And that's the discount you get being a City of Hagerstown resident versus a unincorporated county resident. There's another model that's used in other counties that have multiple municipalities. One of those is Allegheny County. Each municipality receives their own specific yearly differential based upon services that each of those cities or each of those towns provides. For reference, all 9 municipalities in Washington County receive a 12.5 cent real property tax differential, subtracted from the overall county rate. Hagerstown gets 12.5%, Keedysville, Sharpsburg, Hancock, 12.5%. Allegheny County's unincorporated tax rate in fiscal year 19 was 97.5 cents. So if you lived in a non-incorporated area of Allegheny County, you paid 97.5 cents. If you live in Cumberland, you get, based upon double taxation and services, a 13.65 cent differential for a county tax rate of 83.85 cents instead of 97.5 cents. But if you live in Frostburg, you get a 12.5 cent differential, and you pay the county 89.94 cents. Barton, which is a very small town in Allegheny County, only has a 7 cent differential. Cumberland gets 13.6, Frostburg gets 12.5, Barton 7.8 cents. Lonoconee, Luke, Midland, Westernport, all different tax differentials based upon the services each of those towns provide. This model is more representative, in our opinion, of a true double taxation of services provided by the municipality versus the county. The municipal taxpayer pays for those services the municipality does not budget for, including education, county parks, county road use, etc. But yet they pay directly to the city those that the city directly provides. And that could be, in some cases, police, parks, fire, etc. Allegheny County presents its tax differential to each municipality each year. The concerns that we've had. This differential, specific to the City of Hagerstown, does not include a full realization of the redundant services as originally specified that our taxpayers pay to the county. That includes fire services, for which we have stated many times we get 0 differential for, although we have a fully paid fire department, professional fire department, 911 communications center use, and other general government services, including permitting, code enforcement, accounting, finance, utilities, etc. City taxpayers are receiving the same tax discount differential as all other towns in the counties that do not pay their town tax for those services. Now, we're not saying it needs to be 100%. In some of these, it could be fractions of a cent, but its multitudes will add up. As is required by state law, many counties of Maryland, Washington County staff have not provided an explanation of what is being included in the City of Hagerstown tax differential equation since its inception in fiscal year 11. I'll let Michelle talk just a little bit specifically about a couple specific areas that we feel the differential causes a concern for us.
So again, just as a general reminder, when we talk about the tax differential, we are talking about Washington County's records, Washington County total expenses, and the offset or the reduced amount that they make available to residents in incorporated or in towns like City of Hagerstown. So in this example, the 911 fees, when we looked at the budget and the information for Washington County, in grand total for fiscal year 21, the 911 fees, total expense was $5,896,000. And if you look at that $5,896,000 and the ways that it was paid first by unincorporated taxpayers throughout Washington County. So all those areas that are truly county residents and do not reside with inside any corporate city boundaries, they pay $3 million. Hagerstown taxpayers pay $405,630 plus another $800,000 when they pay their taxes to the county. Then all other municipalities, so when you combine all 8 other municipalities across Washington County, they contribute about 5%, which is $306,000. And then last but not least, there is a large bucket of grants, almost $1,270,000 it looked like, and then some small amounts that were done reimbursement-wise. So overall, of the $5.9 million that's in Washington County's budget for 911 fees, and again, 911 fees is what we look at when we see the county records, and we're assuming 911 fees, right? Is their org and their department. This is the breakdown of how that $5.9 million is paid. And you can see there, Hagerstown taxpayers, 22%. The reason, of course, that we have the concern is if you're a City of Hagerstown resident and you're paying that money to the county, but then to the City of Hagerstown, because the City of Hagerstown in my budget I had until recently, right, $405,000 that we spent, which was about another $0.015. So about $0.015 of your taxes that I'm charging you, City of Hagerstown residents, was to pay for 911 fee service, the same service. And again, when we talk about differential, it's not necessarily money that's changing that comes directly to the City of Hagerstown, but it is how much our residents are paying, and it's a duplication of what they're paying for service-wise.
And the last bullet there states that there is no signed agreement which stipulates the payment of the additional fee by city taxpayers. It certainly was discussed, it's in minutes it was discussed, but there has been no signed agreement as to how long it would take, what the true details are of how long, if a city staff person that moved over retires, do we continue to pay or not for that person? It needed an agreement, and until very recently, the county has not been open to having any discussions with us about it. None of this, we come in saying we are completely right about, or we have every bit of evidence as to how we can present this information. All we've asked is to have a discussion. If we're wrong in our perception or in our assumptions on any of these things that we talk about, all we want to be able to know is why. And ultimately, when it does come to the tax differential, it doesn't provide the city one dime. City government doesn't get a dime. It's our residents who are the ones that are paying that differential or not paying that differential for the duplicate services. It's the city resident that is the one that is either going to benefit or pay a little bit more tax to the county, depending on what this differential is. And it only comes down to what is the fair rate that the city of Hagerstown resident should pay.
The next example, we used their org or their department titled simply Fire Operations. And for full disclosure, there is many different departments that have the word fire and other things. I took the most generic one. It's called Fire Operations, and it only had $2,608,000. So again, this is in the county budget. So $2,608,000, the breakdown of the taxes, because again, nobody is getting an offset in the county for this category of fire operations. Nobody. So true 100% county residents only. Again, those not residing with any municipal boundary covers 1.8 million of that. Hagerstown residents pay 537,000 of that, and then all other 8 municipalities 190,000 of that. And again, that's one department in org. So most pressing here, I think, is the fact that when you look at as a resident of Hagerstown, you're paying taxes as a Washington County resident for fire services, and we're just trying to get a feel for what those fire services are and how they're different, because the city of Hagerstown has a fully staffed and paid fire operations. And in the city of Hagerstown budget, just on the operating side, there's $8.6 million in expenses. And so a lot of the taxes as a city resident pays and covers this $8.6 million in paid fire services and staff that the city of Hagerstown provides.
And that we get no differential for.
And I think that's where a lot of my frustration lies, is we hear all the time, well, the county is in the city often, which is very true. It's a mutual aid agreement. We need each other. But we pay for that service when we pay our county taxes. However, when our Hagerstown Fire Department leaves city limits, county taxes do not pay for the Hagerstown Fire Department. So it's easy to say, well, yeah, the county's in the city too, and that is very true, but we pay for that service.
And this is something that we pay for. We're the only paid fire department in the county. Therefore, our tax differential, 12.5 cents, should be lowered by that amount of service.
Should be higher.
Or should be higher, yeah. We should pay a lower county tax, a higher differential, than any other municipality should. So the ask is, I mean, these are very simple, and I'm sure that this will come up in the future, but we just want an open and transparent discussion to our taxpayers of what goes into the yearly calculation of the tax differential paid by each of our city residents to the county every year. And thanks to the mayor and the council and the county commissioners, as of yesterday, hopefully we're gonna get that opportunity to have that discussion. We want to see a reason, we would like to see a reasoning as to why the city taxpayer pays twice or 3 times for some services that were originally supposed to be included in the differential, including fire services. We want a reasoning as to why the county does not apply different differential or discounts to each municipality based upon the services rendered, instead of using the city of Hagerstown discount across the board, because that is effectively what is happening. You know, ultimately it becomes one of those, why would I want to live in the city of Hagerstown and pay the same taxes I would in any other area that is kind of getting the benefits of our differential. It should be a benefit to live in the city of Hagerstown, because you would pay a lesser tax, and you would pay directly for the services you're getting from your municipality. That should be a major benefit of living in the city of Hagerstown, and we don't get that. What services are Washington County municipality taxpayers paying for that are not used at all by them? What are we making that county tax payment for that we don't get the benefit of that tax? And then a pledge to have an open discussion each year to fully explain the differential calculation to the city taxpayer. We don't get to approve ultimately what they would tell us, but it would be great to know what is being used to calculate what our city taxpayers are having to pay. Again, this is not to benefit us as a government. We don't get it done. But it does go towards making a choice of if I want to live in Hagerstown or would choose to live in Hagerstown. I know exactly when I get that county bill and then I flip a couple envelopes and I get that city bill, what exactly I'm paying for, whether it's 100% of that service, whether it's a fraction of that service, but it's a fair representation of what the tax is that's being paid. It's all we're asking. And if we're wrong, we're wrong and we move on. And this is a discussion, especially with the tax differential we have not had, and certainly with new members, and some of us, it's not easy to calculate. That's why we leave it to folks like Michelle to do it, that have better brains than certainly I do. But again, these are simple questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to have that discussion with the county and move forward on what we hope becomes a routine exercise going forward.
I think that bullet point 3 has an additional layer of question to it that's not included in the ask that I think is important for citizens to understand. And I think that's the question I've tried to get to in the Excel file that I created. And I see the chiefs in the back of the room, and I think it's important for our citizens to understand, as has been said here, there are 27 volunteer fire stations, right, in Washington County. And what the county does is the county allots a lump sum of funding through 2 different funding sources in the county budget to be administered and split among these 27 stations, I believe. And one of those pots, if you will, is an equal distribution. And then the other pot, as I understood it, and it could be different now, as I understood it, is really, at the directive of the conglomeration of the stations as an entity, the volunteer association, to distribute. And then the county has a separate component, which is, we'll call it the paid component of fire service, which is that other, so let's say the total amount in the county is $16 million. And that's the number I remember last. And so 8 million of that is those 2 pots. 4 million equal distribution, 4 million is a we'll call it a proportional distribution. And then 8 million is for what we'll call direct county operations, meaning your special ops and things like that, right? I'm looking at the back at the chief. And so, okay, and so let's take that proportional amount. And so not only, and I think bullet point 3 says this, and this is important for city citizens to understand. It says a reasoning as to why the county does not apply the differential or discount to each municipality based upon services rendered instead of using the city of Hagerstown's discount across the board. And there just happens to be, of the 27 stations that we as county taxpayers, meaning people that live in the city, people who live in Boonesboro, people who live outside of a town, all pay for, that get this pot of money, all right? And so that pot of money goes out and gets distributed. And there is, we'll call a third-party entity that is associated with the county that has the responsibility for the equal distribution of these funds as it applies to need, and I get that. But if a station that happens to be in Sharpsburg, as an example, needs an allotment, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, a stipend, if you will, for providing paid service for times in which they need to support their on-call resources, that funding is eligible to that particular station that just happens to be in the jurisdiction of Sharpsburg, i.e., the resident of the town of Sharpsburg and the station, the volunteer station that's part of this volunteer system, happens to get that benefit monetarily from the county to support that particular first due area of citizenry. So not only do we not get credit, if you will, through the differential for the $8.6 million that our city residents pay to make sure that we have paid staff, but the paid staff that $8.6 million pays for to put in the 6 stations that happen to be in the city that are still volunteer stations, if you will, they don't get to ask for that money. So while the station that happens to be, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think the initial allotment was like $150,000 the first year it came out, and they were going to split it and said you can get asked for up to $25,000 so that they can support up to 6 stations that may need this. And they say, look, city, you don't need to be eligible for this, right? This was the decision. You don't need to be eligible for this because you already have those guys in there and those ladies in there that are paid anyway. Well, yes, that's because we need them at those stations. It doesn't make our stations any less eligible in the need for that funding. So not only do we not get credit for doing it, for doing the responsible thing as city taxpayers in the first place, we get penalized. We get penalized by not having access to that funding that we pay as county taxpayers into that system that we're supposed to be getting equal access to. And if you add up the stuff that those stations that happen to be in the city that don't get equal access to the same stuff, funding, that the other stations that happen to be outside of the city or happen to be in other municipal jurisdictions get, it comes to about $500,000, right? About $500,000. And so those are the things that I think are missed a little bit in that third point. It's not just simply to say that we're not getting credit per the differential for the stuff we are consciously kicking in for, which is the $8.6 million, which, by the way, is equal to the same amount that's kicked to all 27 stations in the county. But we're actually being penalized by not getting the funding that's supposed to be sent or supposed to be available to the 27 stations in some equal manner. And a good example of that, and I know I use this, and please, I know folks are probably watching this and or are going to hear about it, and please understand, I think that all the stations are doing all the best that they can, and this doesn't mean to point out, it's just to make the point. So this isn't to demean or point out any one station, but there was a moment in time when in the southern part of the county, they needed additional resource capability, meaning time-wise, to get to folks in South County. And so Bensburg said, hey, we'll take it on. We'll put a substation down there, right? And there for a time they said, hey, we're going to do this. And there came a point in the ask, if you will, where that station didn't really just become a substation. It almost became a self-operating separate station, right?
Yes.
And so we went to the county and said, hey, look, you know, we got this need down there. We're fulfilling it. But the proportional allotment that we get as one station isn't cutting it to pay the bills to now run 2 stations, right? And the county, through the process, said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to give you 2 full allotments. And this is just a second example of this where we get penalized. I think that's the easiest word. In the differential discussion is we have 6 stations that function kind of like that 2 station, you know, if you want to count it that way. Let's say you get 1 allotment and you split it, right? So here's an example where 1 station in a particular jurisdiction that happens to be in the county in a place that happens to have that need says, Okay, now we're gonna be 2, get 2 full allotments, and we say we happen to have that need here, we're at 6, but we get 1 allotment for 6, rather than their 6 full allotments. And right off the top, I mean, that immediately equals, whatever you're losing at 5 times 42, I think was the number at one time, so 220,000. Then you add in 6 stations that could be eligible for the 120, for 25,000 stipend for putting paid personnel. So there's another 150, so you're right at 370 right off the bat. And so, while we talk about, the penny and the quarter or penny and a half as it averages for the 911 center that we double pay for, there's another penny and a half to 2 pennies that were penalized for actively providing paid service that we then voluntarily decide to send out of the city at the full expense to the city taxpayer to individuals that are getting the full benefit as county taxpayers that we're not receiving as county taxpayers. There is nothing fair about that equation. And I think that the ask is simply that we approach and review the fairness of that equation.
And I agree with you, council member. It's more complex than what you even presented. The allocation, since 1946, the city companies receive half of what the county companies have received, whatever that number was. Last year it was 48,000 per company. Each city company only gets 24,000. So that's item 1. If we consider the allocation as a single pot of money. Now I'll go to another pot of money, which you correctly called stipends. 5 levels of service that we get 0 benefit from. EMS reimbursement, fuel, maintenance of our vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. So that is some undetermined pot of money that honestly we haven't had a good conversation about, and I believe it's the administrator's desire to do that. And then thirdly, what you called a stipend in the form of staffing formulas now, county companies that have reached out and said, we need help during the day or whenever, are provided, it's capped at $25,000 a company, I believe, to hire their own career staff to get the rigs out during the day. So when you add all of those together, I submit it's probably higher than the, whatever number you threw out,
Right.
probably close to $500,000.
And on that last item, when that cannot occur, we have the instance of leapfrog,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So certainly worthy of conversation, and the city taxpayers, I believe, are owed this conversation at least, as the administrators requested. Just full disclosure, what are we doing here? And why hasn't this changed since 1946? The other thing that I continue to complain about is that the city does not have a governance vote in any of this stuff. And both Councilmember Aylshire and the mayor, when she was a council member, participating in that governance group, were basically shunned. So I think that's important to get to that conversation as well, if we're ever gonna fix what's broken here.
Agreed. I also think we should look at legislation for next session to add us to the list in Maryland, that it's a requirement to go over each year. And I don't know how anyone could say no to that. I mean, that's just asking for transparency. I don't think that's asking for too much. Yeah, we'll see. You guys have any questions? Are you done?
Yes.
Okay, do you guys have any other questions? Anything to add?
I just have one final number because I'm the number person, right? So according to SDAT, the State Department of Assessment and Taxation, the entirety of Washington County assessable real property base for 21 was 13.2 billion. The part that is incorporated of that entire value for all of Washington County, the portion that is incorporated is City of Hagerstown accounts for 2.7 billion, which is about 21%. The unincorporated boundaries, meaning all those areas without towns, is at 9.5. So just just a number to leave you with, meaning of all of Washington County and all of the assessed value that's being taxed, those that live within side Hagerstown account for 21%.
Thank you.
Significant.
Yep. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have the follow-up on Land Management Code Amendments Fence Provision. Megan?
Hello. So we are here to provide an update on the Land Management Code amendments for the front yard fence provisions. So we did have the Mayor and Council public hearing on April 27th. We did not receive any public testimony at that hearing, and we have not received any to date either. But we did receive testimony in support of the amendments at the Planning Commission public hearing, which was on March 31st. So if the Mayor and Council are in agreement, we would just introduce these amendments with the rest of the 2020 package of Land Management Code amendments, and then they would be approved together on May 25th.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, City Code prohibition on livestock and farm animals.
Hello.
Hi.
We are all here, every few years we're back because we enforce the city's prohibition on farm animals and livestock, and periodically a resident that has livestock then says, why can't the code be changed? And so we come forward and we explain, and so far to date, the feeling has been by the Planning Commission and the City Council that it doesn't make sense to have farm animals in the city. The request presently is because we told someone with ducks that they needed to remove the ducks, and that is the resident who has asked us to look at this again. We provide you a lot of information in the packet about the ramifications of backyard farming, because this is farming in your backyard, keeping livestock. And backyard farming can easily create a nuisance for neighbors when lots are smaller or narrow and lots contain multiple units. All conditions common in most of the city's neighborhoods, especially the oldest neighborhoods. Farm animals create odor, make noise, and can attract pests. If you live near this impact, likely you'll find it annoying and feel it's harming your quality of life. This generates complaints and demands for relief. This is why currently the city code prohibits farm animals. We have over to my right here, Paul Falk. He's going to give you some information about our experience enforcing the prohibition, as well as the ramifications if the prohibition was lifted. We also have someone here from, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name, from the Humane Society.
Chris Mallory.
From the Humane Society, because if we did allow farm animals, it would be the Humane Society that would have to respond to complaints about mismanagement, because nobody at the city has animal husbandry expertise to be able to regulate whether or not the farm animals are being kept the way they should be kept. So, Paul?
All right, so I'm going to go over a little bit about what we've experienced with farm animals in the city of Hagerstown. I could go back about 10 years just because of where our databases could give me information from, and of course I'm looking for the names of animals. So it was kind of like playing a game in kindergarten here, trying to figure out what name someone might have called something and put it in a database. It was quite a challenge here, but I was able to find 47 times we've had a citizen make a complaint to our department about having a farm animal on a property, and 32 of those times been in the last 5 years. So basically 68% of them have been in the last 5 years of what people have been concerned about having a farm animal next door to them. So just kind of let you know what some of them are, that we had chickens 40 times, that we had roosters 17 times, geese 3 times, ducks 12 times, goats 3 times, turkeys 2 times, and homing pigeons once. So although I said all those numbers, they don't add up to 47 times. That's because majority of the times when you have one of these types of animals, you just don't have one type of animal. You have other ones that have joined them because it's more of a party with more, right? So we have a lot of farm animals we dealt with. I will say we've never had pigs, cows, sheep, any of those types of things.
We missed the pigs.
We missed the pigs,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Crystal knows better than me because she deals with more of the enforcement. The most we've had on any property was 12 chickens in Hagerstown that we had to deal with those. I provide a lot of pictures. You can see that it's not just in one area of Hagerstown. They're all over. So some of the pictures I provided, they showed free-ranging chickens on Broadway. You had Wayne Avenue had some ducks. On Hager Street, you see a very creative chicken coop that was on Hager Street there that people had chickens. West Side, we had a goat. We also had Charles Street, we had some goats, and you can see in the picture there's a tent. That's where the goats stayed in, was like a 4-person tent in the yard. Some of the pictures I didn't have that we've had Nottingham, where the people were killing the chickens and then hanging them. The neighbors were not too happy about that. Washington Street, we had some roosters that we were dealing with on there. We have Oak Hill, we have some chickens that people kept as pets. Guilford Avenue, years when Steve actually just first started with the city, that we had a ferret farm, that the key in that one was you had to be the top ferret on all those cages because you would not want to have been on the bottom. And then we've also dealt with, on Central Avenue, we had a place full of reptiles and snakes. Reptiles, snakes, and feeders. I give the Humane Society so much credit on that one because there was no way I was going to be checking all of those snakes to see if they were in good health or not. So we've had all sorts of different animals in our community here, and majority of the time the neighbors are always complaining. Although we've had 47 documented times of concerns, generally the inspectors try to talk to the people first, just to try to let them know that they're not allowed in the community. We generally try to work with them to let people know that they are not permitted. It is a very challenge because we always get the noise complaints, we get the smell complaints from these animals and what they're producing on the property, so that's always a concern. But I'm going to turn things over to Crystal here a little bit because she's going to be able to tell you what the enforcement is even in the county as they permit those types of things, and also her experiences here in the city as well, because we call the Humane Society when there's something with the animal. I can go out and count how many animals are out there. That's how I put my math degree to work. But I cannot tell you if an animal is in good shape or not. That's when the Humane Society comes into play.
So thank you. So for those that don't know me, I'm Crystal Mowry. I'm the Field Service Director for the Humane Society, so I run animal control for the county. Well, I sympathize or empathize with people that do want to have those cute little fuzzy ducks and chickens. The city is not a place for them. They belong on a farm. And yes, they can be great pets. I have them myself, and I live on a farm where they belong. Our biggest concern is the amount of calls that's going to come in if they would be allowed to be within the city limits. The roosters crowing, making noise, complaints, and so forth. I can tell you from my personal experience, on a Saturday morning, if I finally get to sleep in, my rooster blatantly ignores the alarm clock and wakes me up at 5:30, 7 days a week. And having them so close together downtown here, that's what's going to be, we are going to have calls off the hook. We have this experience in the county. We have people calling, complaining about roosters crowing, and there is a provision in the ordinance for that. I just do not have the manpower to respond my officers out to those type of complaints constantly. And I can anticipate now the people calling in for cruelty, for housing requirements. As far as the law goes, it's very narrow on what we can do, even for cruelty charges. You know, the main things we look for is proper food, water, air, space, and pain and suffering, and medical care. Unfortunately, our law does not define what any of those are. It is up to us to bring in experts and go before a judge and convince a judge that our experts are right and what that definition is. We have had experience with people calling about multiple chickens in a small cage and they can't move. We get out there, they can turn around, they can move a little bit. Can they get out and flap their wings like most animal lovers would like to see them do? Sometimes no. Is there a law against that? No, there isn't. You see these chickens running down, in the meat trucks, and you see these chicken farms. Personally, it's inhumane. If I were to find these people and try to take them to court for it, it's not going to go anywhere. So having the space to keep these in a humane manner, and I can see people being upset where people would not be able to. But again, we're not going to have any control over that. And what I think we're going to end up with, the few people that may want to have these animals being happy, we are going to have way more citizens that are unhappy with this. And on a side note, it's really going to encourage the cute Tractor Supply Easter chicks and ducks that happen every year, and the shelter braces and dreads the call 6 weeks later. Hey, I got my kids these chickies for Easter, and they're making a mess, and we want to surrender them now. And we're gonna open the door for that too, but I know unfortunately, we just don't have the manpower to maintain the calls that I am quite sure are gonna come in.
Do you guys have any interest in amending this?
No.
No.
I don't know, what, they had a
Kirsten?
goat on Charles Street?
Pardon me?
There were 2 goats on Charles Street, yes.
Yes, and he did miss the pigs, and maybe that, there was just something past you, the pig, that there's just 3 blocks up, destroyed a house in the yard, and there's been some pot-bellied pigs floating around downtown Hagerstown.
All right, well, we're good. You don't have to worry about that.
I will say this
Thank
is,
you.
I wasn't expecting this type of topic in this role, so thank you for just, just surprising me that we'll be discussing ducks and chickens. Thank you.
Lighten the mood up a little, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
From tax differential to ducks. All right. Last but not least, we have the increase in dirt bike calls for service with Chief Kuiper and Detective Sergeant Lewis.
Joe.
I was expecting this. I was expecting this conversation.
Andy.
Good evening. We were asked to come down. As everyone's noticed, we've seen an increase in the illegal dirt bikes and ATVs riding on the streets here in Hagerstown. And it's not a new phenomenon to us here in Hagerstown, but it has seemed to have exploded a little bit differently and more this year than in past. So I've asked Detective Sergeant Lewis to come down. He and his team, along with other parts of the department, have been addressing this and working on this for quite some time. And I wanted to give them the opportunity to actually speak to those things. So I'm going to turn it over to Detective Sergeant Lewis, and he's going to follow through this, and then we'll finish it up here at the end.
So we have a short PowerPoint. It's just a few videos, a few photos, and just talks about kind of what we're doing and the things that we're seeing. So the first 2 slides are just some videos. The first one's recent, like 3 weeks ago, up at Western Heights Middle School. Right after school let out, and the dirt bikes were kind of going crazy on the fields, tearing up the fields and stuff. And then we'll talk about the next one. And I'm not sure, I guess that'll play. Nope. Nope.
Quick on this.
Oh, he's gonna get that one.
So that's it for that video. As you guys can see, the officers aren't really chasing them, just trying to push them off so they're not destroying the fields and stuff like that. And we'll talk more about why we don't chase them here towards the end. And then the next slide, if I can figure out how to get it working. I'm gonna need some help from Eric. There we go. So this is downtown Locust and Franklin last week.
There's no sound with this one. This is our street cameras.
Jeez.
And with that one, there was 14, I believe 14 bikes on that one. And HPD alone received, I want to say 25 to 30 calls that night just on that group riding around town, just blatantly riding through town with no regard for anybody else. So what we see, small to medium groups of dirt bikes, ATV riders, just going anywhere within the city. Complete disregard for criminal and traffic laws, always refuse to pull over. We've, obviously tried to pull them over numerous times. They're never gonna stop for the police ever. Mimicking a group out of Baltimore called the 12 O'Clock Boys. If you guys have never heard of them, Yeah, most people have heard of them, and, you know, while I hate to see it here, what they see in Baltimore and Philly and in the big cities is much worse than what we're dealing with, thankfully. Riders go to areas a lot of times just to show off and do stunts. They do it just for groups and just to show off, and, you know, we see it a lot at fairgrounds when the families are out there at nighttime. They're not limited to any areas of the city. We see them all over, everywhere in the city. There's no specific areas that they're always in. And this trend is every year usually for the past couple of years, but it's more weather dependent than anything. Obviously, they're not going to be out in the rain or the snow or anything like that, but we really see it at springtime and the beginning of summer when it gets warm. And we usually can kind of quell it for a while, and then next year, you know, I hate to say it, but it's probably going to be back again.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, sir, sure.
Is it often quelled shortly after it gets warm because you typically identify like the individuals and start to like gather, okay, these are the 7 people with these 7 apparatus, and you end up confiscating them? Or I'm just trying to figure out why, you know what I mean, hits June, July, and then just go away.
No, we actually attack the problem by doing just what you say. And we start to pick off those that are riding the bikes, seize the bikes that are being used. Some of those are stolen sometimes, and then there's criminal charges to go along with that. We tackle any traffic charges. If there's damage to property comes from that, we tack those criminal charges onto it.
Right, it isn't like they put them away and then come back out next May and say, all right, it's a month to ride.
And then throughout the
town
summer,
again.
we'll still have a sporadic, or at least in the past, you'd still
But
have.
it seems to like drop drastically around June.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep, and unfortunately, sir, it's not one of these things where we can, you know, that all these dirt bikes and ATVs, they're legal, so we can't target them ahead of time like we would drugs or something like that. It's something we kind of have to wait till it begins, and then we have to be reactive instead of proactive to it. Does that answer everything for you? Okay. So we do things like special operations with detectives and officers. Obviously, because this is public, I'm not going to get into that too much. But I can assure you we're out there doing a lot of stuff, and we have been out there doing a lot of stuff. Ask for any and all public photos and videos related to the dirt bikes and ATVs. We get a lot of stuff, a lot of tips, anonymous tips in, and just photos like that. We send them out to officers. We use on social media. As soon as we get them ID'd, then we start charging people.
Can you tell us where to send them? So for the people watching and for the newspaper tomorrow and whatnot, like, do you have a preferred telephone number for tips? Do you have a preferred email address? Do you want them to use the app? Like, how would you prefer?
Yes, we have multiple ways to get this information to us. So if you want to email it, pdinfo@hagerstownpd.org is one avenue you can take. If you want, we've been promoting the See It, Say It, Send It app for quite some time, and that app will allow you to send pictures and video. It basically works like a text. If you download that app, you can send that to us. You can remain anonymous when you send it that way as well. And obviously you can call us, you can let us know what's going on, but we've got Report a Concern, which is another avenue that you can send. We get a lot of tips coming through Report a Concern daily. People will call in either complaints or tips on things. So a lot of what's going to happen here with this issue is the public needs to get involved.
Right.
They need to be the ones that are giving us the information on who these people are, so that we can go and address those individuals. Whether it's getting them to stop, you know, if it's youth talking to their parents and having the parents deal with it if they don't know what's going on, or we actually want to have them do some kind of traffic charges, or we have to seize the motorcycles and the ATVs. We do that. You know, we want them to be responsible, and being responsible is not being on the road and not doing what you do. You know, a few weeks ago, we had a young man crash his bike. He has now got permanent brain damage from that accident. Because he was out doing this very same thing. So we've had in the past, a few years ago, and Councilman Brucci talked about this earlier to us, 2 youth out in the north end ran a stop sign and hit an ATV. Luckily, both survived. But those are the things that are dangerous about this. And although it's not the crime of the century, the fact is we've been lucky that none of these ATVs or dirt bikes have hit a child, hit a person crossing a pedestrian, a crosswalk, hit someone walking out of their house when they're riding up the sidewalks. We haven't had an angry motorist open their car door and try to stop them because they're riding up through there, blasting through, as you saw in that one video. There's a lot of concerns for the safety, both of the riders and of the public that they're out riding around. And we just need that help. We need that. We've been doing fairly well throughout the years to address it, as we said earlier. This year has been a lot. I mean, we've seen groups of 15 or more come riding around, and the community feels like that they're terrorizing them by the way they're riding through, because it's frightening. The bikes are loud, the ATVs are loud, they're driving between traffic, up on sidewalks. All those things are just not safe for the community, and so we need the community's help on that. So we'll address it in the only way we know how, and that is seizing the dirt bikes, issuing citations or criminal charges if they actually damage property. Where the limitations are for us right now is there's no criminal charge for what they're doing. Outside of not damaging property. If they don't damage property, there is no criminal charge for what they're doing. So
Well, it's all traffic.
It's all traffic.
Yeah, people need to know that.
It's all traffic.
It's
It's a
against the
ticket.
law what they're doing.
But it's a traffic ticket.
traffic, it's
It's
not
a traffic ticket.
And I think that's a big misconception, is everyone's saying, you know, why aren't you doing anything about it? And the reality of it is, even if they pulled over for you, they're going to get traffic citations,
Traffic
not
ticket, we would tow
criminal
we would tow the bike or the ATV at that moment, but it's a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
I will say to this body that I have reached out to Senator Corderman. I've asked him if he'd be interested in presenting legislation at the next legislative session that would address some of the activity that we see, to create a criminal matter out of that. And when I say the idea of that is, it would have to be in those groups. An individual may not apply to that legislative session. And again, it's myself and the senator getting with some other municipality chiefs of police to see that are having the same issues, what we could come up with to see if we can get some legislation. It has a little bit of teeth that at least lets the individuals doing this understand that what they're doing is not right. And it has a little bit of teeth behind it other than a ticket. So we're working on trying to see what we can do there, but our hands are tied in the sense of that. Our policy does not allow us to chase these dirt bikes and ATVs. First of all, if we chase them and they crash and they get seriously injured or die, we're responsible for that. If they crash into someone else or they hit someone else and kill that person or injure that person, we're responsible for that. People want us to put spike strips down to, blow out their tires as they go through. That is never gonna happen on a motorcycle or an ATV. It's not ever something we've ever trained with, and it's always been frowned upon to do that in any jurisdiction, to use spike strips on those kind of vehicles. It will cause a crash when you do those things for those. So, and the reality is, if we go to try to stop them, as you saw in the one video, they're gonna take off the wrong way down a road, they're gonna drive up on sidewalks, they're gonna do things that are even more dangerous, and we're just not gonna catch them. That's the reality. If you wanna get away on a motorcycle or a dirt bike, you will. So, our idea is to try to identify, try to figure out who they are, where they're storing them, where they're going, and use every tool in our toolbox to do so. We have drones we'll put up, we put together details to go out and see if we can identify some groups. And I'll let Andy back on this again. I don't want to take away his thunder here. He put this together, and he's been really the one on the ground doing this, but we're doing everything we can. It's frustrating to the community, and I get that. Trust me, my guys are frustrated. Do you think those officers up at Western Heights weren't frustrated when they just were driving up and down there to try to get them to leave because of the complaints we get in? So we're as equally as frustrated as everybody else when it comes to this.
But it sounds like it's better for us as citizens, and I think this is important for the citizens to hear. Instead of calling you, instead of you getting 25 calls, you'd probably rather them spend that 10 seconds they get to see that individual and get 25 pictures. Right?
Absolutely.
So I think the message to citizens is, don't spend the 10 seconds you see the folks, to call the police and say, hey, they're on, Lee Street right now, because
they're gone
in
by
60
the time
seconds,
they
they're
get
gone. It's better just to get a real good picture and say, hey, this is
If
the
they're
dude
riding
I
through
saw
town,
on Lee
if they're riding
Street.
through town, calling us doesn't do us any good. They're already, by the time we get there,
And I
they're
think
already
that's
gone.
important.
But if they're at Western Heights, if they're in one of the parks, if they're in one of the school grounds and they're tearing the place up, then yes, call us, because we need to go stop them from doing that and doing too much damage. And we'll get them to leave by showing up. But simply riding through town, riding down a street, that call, even if we show up, we're not gonna be able to do anything because they're not gonna stop for us anyway. I'm never gonna tell a citizen never to call us, but don't call us with the expectation that something's gonna be done, then when we show up, we're gonna be able to solve that
Pictures
problem.
more helpful.
Pictures will help. Information, identity of these people. If you know who they are, let us know who they are.
And trust me, people know who they are. There
Oh, yeah.
is no one riding those motorcycles and ATVs that someone doesn't know who that individual is and where they live at. And the people have to realize one thing. When you get frustrated enough and you've had enough, you will make that phone call. I just hope it's sooner rather than later, before one of these guys.
I'm pleading with the community to let us know who they are because it will save their life. Quite frankly, it will save their
And
life.
somebody else's.
If you can't get them to stop because you're a friend or a family member, then call us and tell us who they are so we can make it stop. Even if it's a traffic charge and we seize the bike, it will save their life. We've got a young man now that's brain damaged for the rest of his life because someone didn't try to stop him. And we couldn't. It's just that responsibility there. You know, I know the community doesn't want to hear that, you know, the responsibility needs to be put back on them, but in this case, it really does. We don't have the ability to make this go away on our own. We need help. And if more people call us and give us that information, then that sends a message to the community, to the people in the community that want to do this, that's not acceptable here. And that's how you take back a community, is the community takes it back themselves.
Right.
So we're here to help. We're here to help take that community back and make sure that everyone's safe. And I'm really, really worried that we're gonna have a dead motorcycle rider, ATV rider soon if we can't get this under control. It's gonna happen. It's happened in other communities. It's happened elsewhere where something really bad happens. And I don't want that. Nobody wants that. I don't wanna have to go tell a family member, a mom or dad, that their kid's dead because they were out joyriding on a dirt bike or ATV and they crashed and they're now dead. For those that have never ridden an ATV, those tires and those vehicles are not meant to be on the road whatsoever. They do not handle the way they should on an asphalt road. They are meant to be on the dirt. They're meant to be on an off-road surface where they do handle the way they're supposed to. And it only take a little bit of time. It's just a bad situation. It's an unsafe situation for anybody that's around that when they're doing that.
So I won't continue to beat a dead horse. I think Chief Kiefer actually got most of it in the PowerPoint here, but essentially we'll do search warrants, locate places, charge traffic citations. A lot of times what we do is we take like the next slide here, we'll get videos like this. The one gentleman here, I got some citations coming his way this week. And, you know, he's eligible for a license, but he won't be after this, like just being silly, you know, out on the street for no reason. But they're very blatant about it. They don't care. They'll ride past the police department and tell us we're number one and do wheelies and that kind of stuff.
You guys are. That's why.
And I agree. I do think we're doing a good job, but, so, yeah, they're really blatant about it. So this is just, again, what Chief Kiefer said. We're never going to chase, use spike strips, roadblocks. It's just too dangerous. It's not worth it for some traffic tickets. It's not worth hurting somebody over traffic tickets, again, so. That's it.
I'm interested to know the 12 o'clock boys, how they're trying to mimic them. Some of the 12 o'clock boys are older than me. And
I know, and you're exactly right. And we actually,
like, what in the world?
we see a lot of young kids. Like, we will see really young kids, like 8, 9 years old.
9 years old.
Watching YouTube videos.
Watching YouTube. And let's just be honest. I mean, it's pretty cool what they do on those dirt bikes. I wish I could ride one like that. And, you know, so when you're a young kid and you're impressionable and you see that they're riding through the city and nobody's stopping you, why not try it?
For those that don't know, downtown Baltimore, you know, in some of the videos you'd see, there could be 50 or 100 at a time.
I lived in
riding.
Baltimore, and on Sundays, that was the thing, to go outside on Reisterstown Road and watch all the 12 o'clock boys go by.
Right.
And that was the thing on Sunday. That was kind of a way that Baltimore kind of, you know, allowed that thing for 100 bikes to go ride through Druid Hill and all that. But yeah, that's
But it's
years.
a phenomenon. It's I think just the ATVs and the dirt bikes have come down in price, and some things are easier to get hold of. Like I said, we know that when you got a kid that's 8 or 9 years old, they didn't buy the dirt bike or the ATV. Someone bought that for them.
Wow.
And to allow them to go out.
Can't you
knowing
charge
that
the
they're allowed-
parents with something?
We've had 8 or 9 year olds riding ATVs. Yeah, I mean, it's not as prevalent.
With me 2 weeks ago.
Not as prevalent as what we see generally, but we have had and do have 8, 9 year olds riding ATVs and doing things. And that's comes down to Child Protective Services. There's issues with Child Protective Services that can be addressed for parents. But again, I would rather that we as a community take a hold of this in a way that says we're not going to accept that. We don't want people dying on our streets. because they're out trying to joyride and do these things. You know, as someone said earlier today, if they were riding down the street obeying the traffic laws, people would be upset they're not licensed or not registered, but they wouldn't be complaining like they're complaining. As you can see, they don't do that. They come up on an intersection where the light's red, traffic stop, and they're going past the cars in any way they can get around, and they're blowing through stop signs and red lights. And something bad's really gonna happen.
Yeah.
And if you or your grandmother or your mother or father are the ones that actually wind up hitting one of these kids and one of these young people and killing them, they have to live with that the rest of their life too,
Right.
even though it
Right.
wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
So, we're pleading with the community to give us information, to send us videos and pictures and identities and locations and places where they're keeping these things so that we can do what we do. And I think if that message gets out to the community, that hopefully that'll make it subside enough. Not everybody's gonna listen to that, but if we can stop that kind of activity, it'd be great.
Great. Do you guys have any other questions for the chief? Guys?
Nope.
Thank you very
Thank you
much
for
for
all
the
your work.
information. We'll try to push that out as much as possible. We need
Uh,
the community's help on this.
Well, I just want, some of what we haven't been pushing things out on our Facebook page and pictures is because there was a whole issue of whether it's a juvenile or not. And we've reached out to our legal on that. If we know it's a youth or a juvenile, we will not put it out because we can't, you know, from that standpoint. But if we don't know, then we push those pictures out. So sometimes if it's a very young person, you won't see those pictures.
Well, if they got their face covered, how are you supposed to tell?
Yeah, well, if we don't know, if we can't say that we know that it's a youth, then we'll put those pictures out, even if their faces can be seen. But if we know or if we feel that that's a youth, we will not put those pictures out because we're not allowed to. So that'd be the ones you won't see. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Administrator.
Just, the only thing is Music on the Square again this Friday night, weather permitting. Last, Friday, the wind, took care of having, the ability to do that, so we look forward to seeing folks on the square this Friday night. That's it.
Kristen?
So, glad to be back in person.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome back.
Like Tom Hanks in Castaway, where you come back and you're just like, you know, staring at the food, like, how long was I gone? So,
You probably enjoy the quiet.
it is.
Oh, stop.
It is quieter in here.
Yeah, tonight it is, yeah, I just, if you're watching the individual who, you know, we discussed farm animals tonight about, listen, I can tell you that there will be no change in the code for the city and how we address those farm animals. So hopefully you can figure out something to do with your little ducklings and stuff. So that's about it.
Thank you. Tiara?
Two things. Today is Happy Teachers Appreciation Day. So this whole week actually is Teacher Appreciation Week. So I just want to thank all the teachers out there for all their efforts. And also today is International Firefighters Day. I was hoping Chief would still be here. So thank you to the men and women that sacrifice their lives every day to keep our communities safe.
Thank you. Keisha?
I want to be like you, council member. Man, Burnett, when I grow up, to know all the international days and ice cream day and all that stuff. And so this weekend, Friday, is Hagerstown Cease Pain Weekend. And what we asked is 72 hours to not inflict pain on yourself or anyone else. And it's intentional to just give some hope away. And so I would just put out a call of action to community to take the challenge. Like, take the challenge this weekend, 72 hours. Do not inflict pain on yourself or anyone else. Give some hope away. If we could do that as a community for 72 hours, then man, we're off to a good start just by giving hope away for 72 hours. And happy Mother's Day to all the Hagerstown mothers.
No, thank you. Shelley?
Do you guys miss me? I miss you guys. I don't
We're
have
jealous.
anything.
We're jelly,
Bye.
I'm 100% convinced that you just woke her up.
Probably.
No, I've been paying attention the entire time, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Yes.
Okay.
What, go ahead.
Sunday, May the 9th is my anniversary for 40 years. My loving soulmate has put up with me, and if she's watching since it'll be past May 9th, their next meeting, happy anniversary, happy 40th, and there's no doubt you're going to heaven. So
There is
She
no
is.
doubt.
She is.
No doubt that
She
she's
has
going
earned
to
her wings many times over.
We should give her a certificate, 40 years of this.
Proclamation.
Thank you.
All right. The only thing I have is I wanted to congratulate the two ladies that graduated from Brooks House last Friday. I was able to attend their ceremony. I was not emotionally prepared for what was going to happen in there. It was beautiful. So congratulations to them, and congratulations on the first day of the rest of your life. And lastly, I just want to thank Jeff Klein, Commissioner Klein, also Commissioner Burkett and Commissioner Baker, who reached out to me last week willing to do a 2x2, which ended up in resulting in an actual meeting next Tuesday, either 10:15 or 10:30 a.m. with the county. So
10:15, Mayor.
10:15? All right. So the moral of this story is the TikTok worked. I'm just saying. But no, we appreciate the opportunity to meet with them. So looking forward to it. And with that, we're adjourned.
Hello and welcome to Council Wrap. I'm joined tonight by City Administrator Scott Nicewarner, and you said anything's on the table for this.
It's an honor and a privilege to finally get to do council wraps with the Washington County legend, Wes Decker.
Well, I don't know about the legend part, but here I am. And let's start with the tax differential, since that's something that you were sort of the professor on during the meeting, going through what that means to city taxpayers. I don't know that city taxpayers actually understand just how deep that actually cuts and what that truly means. Can you kind of sum that up a little bit? Because in the press release that we put out about the 911 center payment, which is a little bit different, but certainly relates to that, we talked about the fact that, city taxpayers are also county taxpayers, and that's where this synergy comes into place.
We tried very hard to make it as simple as we could, and it still wasn't simple enough.
It's tough.
It is. I mean, it's a very simple concept. You only want your residents to pay taxes on the services they receive. Has nothing to do with how much money they make, how much particular municipality, the per capita of that municipality, and the amount of taxes they pay. It really boils down to the services that you're paying taxes for. Former Councilman Marty Brubaker worked his entire tenure on the council. It was two and a half terms, trying to come up with a answer to double taxation, because ultimately, as I said, it doesn't provide the city anything. As city government gets nothing. This isn't like it's going to be money that's suddenly going to be flowing into as city revenue. It's not what it's about. It's just simply about our city taxpayers paying their fair share. And ultimately, I've lived here almost 36 years now, and I pay a city tax and I pay a county tax. People will say, move out in the county, you only pay one tax. I move out in the county, I don't get near the services that I get living in the city, a paid fire service, parks, the road system here, the police department that we have here. So I don't want to just live out in the county. I want to be part of the city, but by the same token, I want to pay the tax that is my fair share to pay. And that's really all it's about. How the calculation is done, as I've said, I would not be able to do that calculation. That's why we have smart people at the county and we have smart people at the city. But it just needs to be a fair share, and we need to have a discussion. If we're already paying our fair share, 12.5 cents is what our fair share is, so be it. But taxpayers need to be told that. They need to be told it every year.
I'm going to get you one of those calculators with the real big buttons. Maybe that would help a little bit. Here's my question to you, though, in all seriousness. Why do you feel that this is such a difficult concept for the county to sort of grasp when you lay it out in a presentation like that and you see, the size, not only the size of the city of Hagerstown, but the services that the city of Hagerstown provides its citizens, which are redundant in the county, and then you have other municipalities who don't provide their residents those services, and yet that tax differential is exactly the same from municipality to municipality.
I don't know. If I knew, we wouldn't be having this discussion, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's not being flipped.
No, I understand.
And it's certainly not any of us here that is saying that any municipality now needs to have their taxes raised 10 cents from instead of getting a 12.5-cent differential, get a 2-cent differential. That's not what we're advocating either, because somebody will politically pay a price for that. And it probably won't be a city council member. It'll probably be, someone else. It's not what we're advocating for. And how they want to deal with those particular municipalities, that's on a case-by-case basis. All I know is that as far as the city of Hagerstown resident goes, we need to be treated as fairly as the other municipalities. And ultimately, it is a benefit to live in the city of Hagerstown, where you are provided many more direct services than any other municipality, whether you live in Washington County or whether you're Cumberland in Allegheny or Frederick in Frederick City. You're anywhere that has multiple municipalities. And I can only speak, based upon the mayor and council's wishes and the discussions that staff have had with the county. And before we were kind of ignore is a tough word, but before the talk stopped about 2 years ago when we were discussing all of this, we were making some progress, and then of course COVID hit. And things, our attention went elsewhere. But then once, towards the end of last year, I thought we were ready to get back and try to identify those costs that we're not getting the differential for, and how that could change, and kind of keep all of this, intrigue and all this, big city politics at bay. And maybe we'll get to that point now. I hope so, because it ultimately is our city taxpayers that pay the price for it, and I think I know these folks up here were elected to represent them, and I think that's what you're seeing is representation by all 6 of the council members and the mayor representing their residents.
Yeah, certainly a lot of hard work by the mayor, and who would have known that it would be TikTok video that would help sort of break the ice on all of this.
Not me, not me. I heard it happening over there from the office, and that's one thing about the administration we have here now, is that it's diverse. It's the ideas that come out of them are certainly ones that test an old guy like me's. Maybe mental capacity at times, and I think, geez, what are we going to do here? But ultimately, it got results, and we'll talk about this more as we get through the year, and once we get the goal setting complete on I think it's the 18th of May. But it's a new world, and there's new ways to do things, and it's not your old city government anymore. Things are changing, and it's exciting to watch when you've been doing this for so long. It's exciting to see all the new ideas, and every one of them, even the elder statesman up there. I think they're kind of reinvigorating him with some ideas. So. It rubs off.
Well, it was sort of interesting to see that, Commissioners President Jeff Klein kind of made that announcement that there would be the city-county joint discussion through Facebook, through a Facebook video. So it's like social media. Yeah, I mean, the product that everybody says divides everyone, suddenly bringing everyone together.
Yeah.
So No wonder we had tornadic activity around the region on Monday evening.
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that's where we'd be now?
Yeah, very, very strange.
Used to watch
in a
you
lot
in
of
low
ways.
def on Antietam
wow.
Cable 6.
Probably the best way to do it.
And now we're now.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
Yeah, you don't want to see me in high def, that's for sure. I'm not sure that that's a bump up in technology. That's not the way you want things to work. Another big discussion tonight, certainly the dirt bike issue, and we heard from the chief and just the frustration with this in general, and certainly shared by the community. But I thought a great message is that really this is an opportunity for the community to take the community back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this works in so many different ways, so perhaps this is an avenue to bigger and better things. If we can get the community to come together on something like this, maybe this is sort of the linchpin and the jumping off point for other things to take place.
Look, the ones that are doing this don't care. Don't care.
They
It's
don't
just
have a
like
care
they're
in the
out to
world
show
about
off.
it.
They want to. They want to show off. I know. The mayor and I live on the same block on Summit Avenue. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Sometimes what we see going up and down the street, especially a street where we have an increasing number of children that are out playing. That one little slip could cause one of those kids to get hit. A ball going out into the street while one of these people are flying up a street on a bike. Nobody wants to see that happen. And the other bottom line to it is, our police are not going to chase, because not only could a citizen get hurt, the chasee get hurt. I don't want one of my officers to get hurt. It's not worth it. But it is. You said it. You said it perfectly, Councilman Alshire, Councilman Brucci, all of them. If you're that concerned about it, take your community back and report that.
Yep.
Get a license plate. Get a picture. Trust me, if our officers and our force has a way to do something about it, they are going to do it. But they are not going to put anyone in harm's way, and they're not going to put themselves in harm's way dealing with this issue.
Yeah, there are plenty of times when your first reaction should not be to use your cell phone to take a picture or a video, but in this case, this is the time,
when you
this is
want
your
to do
chance.
it.
Yeah, right here.
This is when, social media can be your friend. I hate social media when it comes to government. Former Councilman Lou Metzner said is when we start running city government by Facebook, we're going to have a big problem. I completely agree. But in this case, this can save lives by taking a picture, getting it to the police, and let us take care of dealing with social media and get it out there. And let's get some of this garbage off the street.
Yeah, use the See It, Say It, Send It app.
Yep.
Download that. It's free.
Yep.
Very easy to use, and you get your message across, and hopefully get some of these
There's a great
thugs.
IT department that came up with that with that app
Huh.
a few years ago.
Huh. Well, who was
Just-
overseeing
yeah.
that department at the time?
Yeah.
It kind of slips
Back
my
in the
mind.
day.
Let's get back to I want to finish on a positive note here with something, because you said it a little bit earlier today in a meeting that you had with staff. Just mentioned, you said post-COVID, and man, that sounds really good. Not quite there yet, but what's your level of optimism with where we are now from where we were and the way that we've navigated everything as it relates to city government?
Who would have thought this time last year sitting? I mean, 2 years ago, this is my second anniversary of this doing this job today.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you, or condolences, one or the other.
No, I'm sincere about that.
But who would have? Thank you. Who would have thought? This time last year, that we would be meeting like this again.
Yeah.
We were in the midst of what I still call the great unknown. We didn't know what was going to happen. The numbers were starting to spike in Washington County. I think at about this time, I actually went through and looked at some of the old emails in the COVID folder. And it was about this time when we were really starting to hear, we were starting to read and we were starting to hear, because you and I used to sit in this room and listen to Health Department Director Stoner.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And we would sit here and look at we'd look at each other like, holy crap, what is going on here? This is a real thing. So honestly, it gets to the point where we are now with this, COVID is still here. The ability to sit in this room without masks on, still staying social distance, have more people in here, and to be able to continue city government the way we have been able to, and to get to this point, it's almost, I don't want to say, it's a little eerie. Just like going back into a store the first time and looking and seeing people without masks.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, boy, do I want to do something that was so natural?
Right. Is this okay at this point?
Something that was so natural has now become, a little bit, anxious.
Yeah.
But I think we continue to move forward. The numbers continue to get better in Maryland and in Washington County. I wish we had more folks vaccinated. I get it. Some people, the concerns some people have with the vaccination. Thankfully, my entire family got vaccinated. We had no issues over the normal ones that were had, and they were gone like that. But I tell you, the peace of mind it does give you. It doesn't mean we're not going to get it. We still could get COVID. But if they tell me it's a 100% chance I'm not going to die or be in a hospital, I'll take those odds any day. We just need to now, as a city, look at the ARPA money that we're going to be getting here soon. We're going to sit down and we're going to meet for hours, I can see, and make a deliberate effort to ensure that money gets spent to the best efforts of the community. And we don't talk about those things yet here during the budget presentation that Michelle does, that I know some people use it as a sleeping aid, but it's extremely important for folks to, again, I go back to our fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers, and we need to at least get that information out there. So if anybody questions what the city is doing with that money that they send us every year to pay taxes, we need to make sure they have that information directly available to them. And it's going to be even more important now as we get through COVID. Certainly, I think we're on the back end of it, regardless of what the media tries to tell you. And we always talk at home about just when you think you're on the other side, there's always something else crops up just to keep it going again. And,
another variant.
And not to blame this on the journalist that you are, or the journalist my son is, or whatever, that you all are trying to amp us up. But it's just it's just odd, and it's going to take a while to get back into it. We were at the Maryland Theater. We had a friend that offered us a couple tickets to go to the Maryland Symphony, first one they'd had an audience in the balcony. And I can't appreciate the Maryland Theater staff enough, or the Maryland Symphony Orchestra staff that made it as natural and as comfortable as they did in there. Mm-hmm. And to actually feel like, yeah, maybe we can do this again fairly soon. The next thing we want to do, I want to go to a ball game again and sit in the stadium. And I tried to talk about that at the meeting you mentioned today, that we're not through this yet, but now we've got to start looking at, hey, as that light becomes even bigger at the end of the tunnel, and we know that it's not a train coming at us now. We need to be prepared for that and try to help the community get back to some semblance. We're never going to be back to normal again. It's like 9/11. We on 9/10. 9/11 was a lot different than 9/10, and it has been ever since. It's the same way with COVID, and we just have to make it make this as comfortable and as nice a place to live as we absolutely can, and make people start to put COVID a little bit in the back of their mind, but still, be prepared and take care of each other.
Sure. And the big key in the short term, as you mentioned, getting vaccinated, I think only 27.1% of those in Washington
Yeah, it's
County are
mind-boggling to
vaccinated
me.
now. And there is a free vaccination clinic coming up in the Hagerstown Fire Department parking lot on Thursday, administered by the Health Department.
Yep.
So encourage everyone to take advantage of that.
You know how many times we sit here over the starting probably in March, we would sit in this room together at 8:30 every morning, and hear 10 more deaths, 15 more deaths, 75 in the hospital, and think, oh my gosh, man, if I could get vaccinated, I'd get it. And it's 27%. To me, that's just amazing. It's just amazing.
And there was a point in time too, again, just pointing out how things have changed. There was a point in time too where it was so difficult to get vaccinated.
Oh, yeah.
Now they have more vaccine than they have people showing up to get vaccinated.
What crime is it when you see vials starting to be thrown away?
Yeah, that's
to me,
mind-boggling.
that's just it is. It's just not reality for me, and but I get it. I get why people may have an inclination not to get vaccinated. I get it, but boy, I sure hope we can we can get something out there to make people more comfortable, because we got plenty. Washington County's done a tremendous job. Earl Stoner is an unsung hero in this community. Dr. Joshi at Meredith and all the Meredith staff, the health department staff. My goodness, again, I go back to when we used to sit and listen to those calls, and they'd go down through the folks to talk to, and Dr. Gaviria and the folks that, you could tell in their voice that, they were trying to be as positive, but they could, they were scared. We were all scared.
Well, nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew. And, you can never thank all those folks enough, and especially the ones who had to deal with this 24/7 and then go home to their families and hope, that everything would be okay there. So
well,
it's odd. It's tough to get. It's tough even as an administrator, and even with our directors, to try to get the gears to start shift again. That that we're getting everything. We don't have COVID always on the mind, but we're getting there.
Well, I know I speak for everyone, hopefully, in the city. We appreciate the job that you've done in getting the city of Hagerstown through all of this. I know we joke around a lot. We have one of those relationships behind the scenes, but certainly I want to say on record, thanks for your leadership through all of this, because I think, as a city, we've come through this as unscathed as we can be. Certainly, there are plenty of people out there who have been touched by this in a negative way, but as far as getting the city to get through this in a way where people saw very little drop-off in services, if they saw any at all.
If they saw any at all.
I think it's that's been tremendous.
Well, and I appreciate that, but I wasn't the one out there that was, doing the garbage collection or
that's
processing
true.
the moves.
That's true, but you're the one who made the decision to, keep things as status quo as possible, but keep everyone as safe as possible, and to keep things as normal as possible when it comes to a working schedule.
I've been known, and if any of my family might be watching this or watch this in the future, that I've been known to sometimes when my daughter broke her ankle when she was a kid, and I was like, there's nothing wrong with your ankle, just shake it off. Trying to keep it as normal as possible. And I'm not going to lie, there were many times when I would sit at home and I was thinking, man, I know what I'm trying to do here, and I'm trying to keep things going, but maybe this isn't quite the approach to take. But, we would sit in here every day and meet with the directors there. For many months, we sat in here every day. And just trying to make sure that, are you okay? Are you okay? Is your department okay? We had people that didn't like the fact that they were still working, and I got that.
Yeah.
We had people that didn't want to wear a mask when they were riding in the truck, that didn't want to socially distance or do that kind of thing when they were on a job site. But I'm very happy to say that within the city of Hagerstown, knock on wood to this point, there was not one outbreak of COVID that originated in a city, in a city operation. There were those that got COVID, absolutely got COVID. They did not get it here. It was outside. And that is a testament to the folks that work here and that were dedicated to getting this done. We all had to rely on each other, brother. You know that.
Yeah. Well,
and we sat in here a lot of times. It was more of a I think a psych session for a lot of us. That, you know, and people don't realize that out there. I mean, they can make their their determinations of what government does, but you know, there 10, 15 of us would sit in here, and it was an exercise in mental capacity or futility, trying to figure out, you know, what side of our pants were we going to fly out of the seat of, basically, because that was, you know, none of us were prepared for dealing with a pandemic, and I think we did. I think we did good. I hope we did. We didn't do everything right. You know, we probably did more things wrong, but ultimately, it was providing the service to the citizen. I hope we did a good job of it.
yeah, I think that was kept first and foremost in our minds throughout, as always.
Yep.
For City Administrator Nice Warner, I'm Wes Decker. That's a wrap.
Hey, that's a wrap, brother.
We'll see you next time on Council Wrap. Thanks for watching.